Welcome to Greenhouse Grower to Grower, the podcast where we talk to growers from across the greenhouse industry about market trends, innovation, their biggest challenges and opportunities, and more. I'm Brian Sparks, editor of Greenhouse Grower. Josh Smith is vice president of Kopke's greenhouses in Wisconsin. During Cultivate 24, Josh joined Tamara Bartlett of Bartlett Instruments for a discussion on bringing a tech sector mindset to greenhouse production and how to eliminate time-consuming tasks and develop SOPs for automating common greenhouse practices. I caught up with Josh recently to learn more about his background in technology, how he brings a forward-looking approach to team building, process management, and strategic and tactical planning, and more. Here's our conversation. Let's talk about Cultivate. I know you were involved in the show and worked with the team at Bartlett on a discussion. So can you kind of talk about, the topic that you presented on, how it developed, and then, what you brought to the table and what you learned from the conversation there?
Yeah, I was approached by Molly initially from Bartlett Instruments, one of our vendors for environmental controls, about doing a talk at Cultivate about how to apply a tech sector mindset to the greenhouse side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And she put me in touch with her sister, Tam, who also works with Bartlett as, I guess, their senior programmer, basically. And Tam has got a breadth of experience in that arena, working for a number of organizations. She even worked on code for satellites at one point. So a very impressive background, far more impressive than mine. Before I came into the green industry, and I should say that I grew up on our farm and in this business, but I left the farm at 18 with both fingers held high and said, I'll never be a farmer. I'll tell you that. As some are often, it's not an unfamiliar story I've found over the years. Where I worked in the tech sector, both as an educator, business educator in the Microsoft space, as well as doing process management and all holding that down while touring as a full-time musician. So
wow, okay.
Your 20s are great for doing all the things because you still have energy. Now I'm in my late 40s, and I focus primarily on our family business. I was asked by my stepfather, Gordy Kopke, who started the business some 43 years ago as just a vegetable truck farm, to come in and take a look and see if it would be something that I'd be interested in eventually taking over, or at least being a significant part of. And so I said, well, shoot, why not? Let's give it a shot. This what I've been doing for 25 years is getting a little old, and it'd be nice to take on a new challenge. And
Sure.
so yeah, I kind of jumped in with both feet. My training on day one was, well, go see what retail needs, go see what production needs, and get back to me at the end of the day. And from then on, it's just been quite a ride. Very intense business, very, very fast paced. Once things hit the fan. We are not only a grower but a grower retailer,
Mm-hmm.
and we serve our local area here in southern Wisconsin. But we grow something like 80 to 85% of what we sell straight to the retail public.
Sure.
And so it's juggling a number of hats. Now we have a full-time head grower, and he has his own team.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of naturally migrated more towards the retail and business side of things, given my background.
Sure.
So I'm vice president of sales, and I head up, but I wear a lot of hats. I'm a plumber, I'm an electrician, I'm not an unfamiliar thing for a lot of operators.
Right.
So we, long story short, we've been working with older control systems, primarily in our 33 greenhouses, the dial a temp kind of line voltage, little twist the knobs to get the events to open, set the thermostats that you would buy at Home Depot or Menards for your house to turn on and off the heaters.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I came in right away with my, outside the industry look at things, and which is always dangerous because you come in hot with a lot of ideas. And I
Right.
learned my lesson there very quickly. Don't do that. Observe and learn first. And but what I did notice was that our head grower at the time, Paul, and my stepfather father were spending a lot of time just managing those environmental controls and trying to keep the vents from opening when the heat's on, and so on and so forth. And because these things don't talk to each other, there's really no fail safe for that kind of thing. So we'd come in the morning and here the vents are all open, but the heat's on because it was a warmer night in March or something in
Sure.
Wisconsin. And so we're seeing all of these things. Plus, I was kind of mentally just keeping track of the time spent, and I, to the point where I was following both of them around, just kind of watching and seeing how much time are they really spending in these buildings, just managing things that ought to be automated in this day and age,
Yeah.
if you can afford to do so.
Mm.
And so I figured that on average they would spend combined about a half hour to an hour a day just running around between buildings adjusting thermostats.
Okay.
That's a significant amount of time in my book,
Yeah,
especially
absolutely.
when you've got daylight to work with, and those are your working hours. So it's when you add that all up, it was turning out to be, what are we, about 90 days worth of a season or so,
Hmm.
um, 90 to 120 days. So, an hour a day, that's 90 to 120 hours of time spent. And and I come at it from the perspective, having come from IT, is that everybody's time is billable to some degree. Your time is one resource you spend that you can never get back. And so
Right.
I figured the old man's got to be worth at least $50 an hour, and the head grower's got to be worth somewhere up there too. So times 100, on average, that's a significant chunk of change where they could be using their knowledge and skills and frankly, just the wealth of their experience to do things that were more valuable to the company.
Yeah.
Uh, so, the hunt was on to find some environmental controls that would work for us. And I spoke to some vendors that cultivate. Every year we go down to Columbus, and
Hmm.
some of those vendors. This was during when hemp and cannabis was really on the rise, and so
Right.
what I noticed, and I'm not pointing fingers, but this is a free market economy. As soon as all these multi-million-dollar hemp growers came into things, gosh, they got cash to burn, and it didn't seem like they cared a whole lot how much things cost. And those vendors took note of that and said, "Well, gosh, it's going to be $10,000 a zone."
Yeah.
And I said, "We can't do that." Not all of them were like that, but the ones that had the features and the benefits to what we were trying to do,
Right.
they were in that price point. And so we tried to look for a vendor that had some experience in the green industry. But yeah, so we got to the point where we just said, hey, it's we need something that's affordable, but we also need something that's going to do what we need it to do. And we want to work with a company, or no matter who it is, that's going to have really great service. Coming
Right.
from tech, that's my number one concern. We have a point of sale system, same vetting process. How is your customer service? Are you going to be there at 3 a.m. when something's not working? Can I call someone
Hmm.
if I don't understand the technology? And so we found that after having great conversations with a number of different vendors, we settled on Bartlett for that for those products to help us out.
Yeah.
So long story short, we've been using these more automated controls, complete with a phone app and a web interface and this sort of thing, cloud-based and everything, for a number of years. And yeah, having spoken with Molly and some of the other folks over there, they said, well, hey, you've got a tech background.
Hmm.
Would you be interested in helping translate some of the geek stuff to another industry full of geeks, but speaking a completely different language,
Right.
when it came to what it looked like in the greenhouse. And so that's
Yeah.
kind of how everything got rolling. And then over the course of a few months, Tam and I kind of, through Zooms, because she's out in LA,
Right.
we kind of put together this talk, and I thought it went well. I thought
Good.
it had
Good.
pretty good reception. Yeah.
So can you talk about just exactly what you presented, and then I don't know if there was any interaction with the audience during the presentation as well.
Yeah. So the idea was that, from Tam's perspective, she came from a world where they use a lot of process management, and I guess you could say, rules, if you will, for reducing things like toil.
Yeah.
And to define what that is, I mean, everything is toil when you kind of look at it on the surface, but toil tends to be things that are tasks that can be repeatable, tasks that can be automated,
Hmm.
freeing up your time and resources for other activities. Um, We looked at monitoring when it comes to automation, or and it doesn't have to be technological automation. It could simply be a run book, as we put it, or an SOP that says, when this happens, we do this. When this happens, we do this,
Hmm.
and we try to account for as many of the variables as we reasonably can
Yeah.
without finding ourselves in a state of analysis paralysis where you're trying to figure everything out. That is the danger side of trying to go too deep.
Right.
So we talked about monitoring and we talked about alerting. So the big tenets there come from a something called SRE, or software reliability engineering.
Hmm.
It's something that was implemented at Google a long time ago, and it's something they still use today to. She would talk about, if I build a server, she says, well, I'm going and I want to spin up another server to handle more traffic on a website. Instead of starting from scratch, I've already got this predefined template and I can fire that up and configure it the way I need it. Or if there's some code to be written, having some sort of automated testing process that then monitors the testing and looks for off nominal things and then reports back as to what's occurring or what has happened.
Right.
uh, and when I look at the greenhouse world, when you're of a certain size and you can start to afford to look at some of these things, it becomes very important to really be able to set up a series of events that you want to have occur, monitor that they're things are performing as expected, and if things are not nominal, be alerted to the fact that these things are happening.
Hmm.
And then the reporting piece is to document what has happened so that you can go back and do some what we call post-mortem analysis,
Sure.
and just follow up what went right, what went wrong, what could we do better, what did we really love. You got to celebrate your successes as well and say, hey,
Yeah.
we really did this well. Let's do this again. Let's codify this and make sure that this is something we continue to do going forward.
Hmm.
So it was kind of that's a roundabout answer, but essentially it just came down to stuff that I think a lot of us inherently know. If you've owned and operated a business, or you've worked for a well-run business, that you have to have some process, you have to have some process and procedure, and being reactionary to everything, though it does occur, if you can plan ahead a little bit and
Yeah.
be proactive about what you know every year is going to happen. Then you can start to respond to things. Then you can start to focus some of your attention on things that can ultimately help your staff grow and sell better plants, ultimately help you trim the bottom line by looking at costs, and hopefully understand what to expect a little more in each season.
Yeah.
We joke around here because every year we grow 33 greenhouses worth of annuals, perennials, veggie starts, organics, and hanging baskets and planters and so forth. And every year, come about April 15th, about a week before we open, my stepfather, my head grower, and myself and a number of us all look around the room, or around the greenhouses, and go, crap, are we even going to sell any of this stuff? How are we going to sell all of this stuff? And my wife always gives me a little bit of guff and says, you do this every year, right? You freak out, you stress out about things not working right, or stuff's not going to sell, and by the time middle of June hits, you guys are empty
Yeah.
practically.
Yeah.
And aside from some sort of uncontrollable economic situation, we're hoping that that's the standard by which to live, and we should plan around that so that we're not stressing out as much about what's going to happen this season, or what's going to happen with various environmental controls.
Well, and I would imagine too, I mean, you talk about planning and being proactive, and, the whole idea of this, and you hear so much more of that today, that, there are so many tools out there for collecting data and collecting numbers in the greenhouse. The next step that the industry is faced with is being able to then take that data and then make informed decisions on, okay, so here's the numbers. What are they telling me, and how should I be responding to that? I would imagine that plays a lot into what you guys are trying to accomplish there.
Yeah, so the post-game analysis is just as important as getting all of the process in place and executing on it. Of course, that's the other key that we can talk about, is execution.
Right.
That one always gets the short shrift sometimes. But the analysis of the data, we had to decide, what numbers are important to us. What are the metrics, the KPIs, to use some businessy terms, that we use to steer the ship. Sorry, a
Yeah.
lot of metaphors here.
Oh yeah.
But what are we looking at that's going to help us drive our business? What don't we need to look at? Because, for example, you buy a point of sale system, you might have 50 reports in there, and you're only going to use 3 or 4 of them realistically.
Right.
So what's important to us, which helps us determine what should we really focus on measuring and recording,
Hmm.
and then going through, and if necessary, bringing in someone who's got some experience, maybe one of our competitors or colleagues. I mean, it's a small industry, so we all know each other, and I love that.
Yeah.
I can call up a competitor and say, hey, we had this happen. Has that ever happened to you? What do you think about that? Without revealing any business information that's going to cause
Sure.
problems, but just saying, and then saying, how does this impact our business? How did it impact our business over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years? How did the weather relate to that? Obviously, because that's the number one thing we can't control that seems to impact everything.
Right.
And then going forward and saying, okay, this has significance. So therefore, if we do this, if we pull this lever, what do we think is going to happen? If we pull this lever, what do we think is going to happen? And in business, you make a lot of bets, and you use as much of the best information as you can to make those bets, and create your tactics that match up with your overall strategy for your business, and then you stick with it unless unless the facts show themselves in such a way that you say, well, this strategy really isn't working, or these tactics really aren't working. We got to make a change. But we try to stick with our tactics as much as we can.
Yeah.
You don't play a football game with audibles. You create plays, and you practice, and you go out there and make sure that you've got those routes down right,
Yeah.
and then you play the game. If you're running around trying to win a football game, with nothing but audibles, I feel like you're going to have a tougher time, and it's going to
Yeah.
be more stressful, and it's going to be more resource intense, and you're going to have injuries, and that's all the stuff that goes with it.
Well, and you talked about toil at the beginning in the conversation. I mean, and that goes back to just efficiency being the name of the game. And then if you're spending all of your time or half your time, adjusting and just going in different directions, I got to imagine that takes away from the efficiency side too. As you said, you got to let things play out sometimes, and really focus on what's your ultimate goal and how you're going to get there.
Absolutely. When you let things play out, what's going to happen. Now, obviously, those that have a lot of experience. I'm only 13 years in the game here, but obviously, I know people that have 40, 50 years of experience doing this. In some cases, they have a better beat on things. They've seen it all, so to speak, and so they don't necessarily need as many of the types of tools that someone at my level of career in this industry might need.
Yeah.
But that's how I'm learning, is to look at what's happening as it plays out, and hopefully being able to pass that information on to my sons, or even within our own staff. I've taken it upon myself to teach as many employees as I can, just regular seasonal floor people, how to do a cost of goods sold equation, so that they know how much it costs us to produce this product that they're selling out there on the floor, or
Yeah.
or that they're trucking around, so that they take hopefully a little more pride in things, and see the importance of making sure that we pack the carts properly, and treat all the plants properly. I mean, me just standing on a soapbox yelling at people about how much things cost and things, that's not motivating, especially to a generation now that really wants to see what the owners are doing,
Hmm.
where their priorities lie, and where their uh, what's the right word? I guess where their beliefs are. What what kind of a business is it? What kind of people are actually running this business? Where
Yeah.
they're these things are all important, and so being able to educate the staff as to, here's why we're making this decision, as much as I can. When things are in full swing around here a couple of weeks before Mother's Day, I don't have a whole lot of time to sit down
Yeah.
and do the math with people, but we bring people in early for training, specifically to teach them about the business, and help them understand why we do the things we do, and it costs us a little money to do that, but the payout is it pays out in dividends that we wouldn't have otherwise. So just
Yeah.
giving them those tools in the way of knowledge as to why we do things is very important for us.
What I love hearing too about, stories about, bringing, because a lot of growers, it's very easy to live in your own bubble and just, you stay learning just from, I mean, learning from other growers is important, but staying within the horticulture, floriculture bubble is interesting, but, bringing in, perspectives from other industries. So,
Mm.
going back to as you brought your own a background into this industry, what are some of the elements that you brought in and you saw and said, okay, this, if there's something lacking in horticulture, this is it. Here's what I can bring to the table to help make some improvements, not just necessarily for Kopke's, but for the industry as a whole.
Oh boy, that's a deep and loaded question, Brian. I don't want to tick anybody off. Being an outsider, because I still have this terrible case of imposter syndrome, having not done this my entire life, right? The things that I saw in the tech world and in general in the business world, because as a consultant, I was working with a lot of different industries.
Yeah.
Um, Everything from manufacturing to tech to just office stuff. I mean, it didn't all over the place, and some agriculture companies as well. I guess the biggest thing that I saw coming into our business as well as the industry as a whole was that people spend an awful lot of time reacting.
Hmm.
And I understand that because that happens in every industry. In tech, that's challenging to do because you really if you want a computer program to do what you need it to do, the process that you use to develop that solution for a customer is to sit down and first talk about their goals, their needs, their budget,
Hmm.
as well as what they want to accomplish, what don't they want to see happen, where are the problems, and then you do something called red team it. You look at all the things that could possibly go wrong. You sit down with all the key players and say, okay, no emotions. We're not going to, we might argue with each other, we might even yell at each other a little bit, but let's agree to end this as colleagues and friends once it's all
Yeah.
over, because our goal is to take our plan and tear it apart and find all the ways that it could possibly go wrong within reason, obviously, and look at ways to mitigate some of those situations and those problems,
Hmm.
so that we can account for as many of the things that could possibly go wrong. Now, the nice thing about what we do, I think, in our industry, especially as a grower and retailer, is it's pretty much the same things every year. You have to decide what you want to sell, and you look back at last year, what sold well, what didn't. You make some changes as to what your product mixes look like.
Yeah.
You talk to your customers and find out what they want, and then you make some decisions as to what you're going to order. And of course, you're doing that, in the summer and in the fall, not knowing what the latest trend's going to be 6, 8 months from now. But you make your best guess there, and then you plan out your production, and you get your crew together, and you start, going through the process of planting everything, growing it. Then, despite the weather, you do what you can to understand those aspects of it and
Hmm.
make changes. Those are the on the fly kinds of things that you have to account for.
Yeah.
And then you hit the floor and sell this stuff. And because we've been in business for over 40 years, we've built up a clientele that come back to us year after year. So we're not as worried about, are we going to attract any customers this year? We're not so much worried about that anymore as we are just making sure that when those customers that we see year after year show up, they see the things that they expect to get every year. I mean,
Yeah.
geraniums around here are huge. But also, here's some cool new introductions. Here's some neat things that are a little off the beaten path. We grow approximately somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 to 1,000 different varieties of annuals, perennials, veggies, and other types of things. And when I say varieties, I don't mean necessarily cultivars,
Right.
but form factor for the product, right? So if we're talking about a geranium in a hanging basket, straight geranium, or a combo, or a planter, or 4 inch or 6 inch, I consider those each a product variety, if you will, simply because that's what the customer sees.
Yeah.
They see it based on their need, and so we plan all of that out, try to make our best guess, and then go forward with the processes that we've developed over the years. What I found lacking was any written documentation.
Hmm.
It was all up in the boss's heads, and that's great. But when those people decide to retire, as the head grower Paul did at one point, all that knowledge goes with him. All of that experience goes with that person.
Yeah.
And you've got a crew left going, what did they do exactly? How did they produce what they produce? How did they do it with these types of results? And how do we build on that? Shoot, how do we even, we feel like, how can we even get back up to the point where they were so that we can build? And when somebody with a ton of knowledge leaves your organization, it's a real kick in the shorts.
Yeah.
You're going to lose a lot of stuff, a lot of knowledge and experience that, unless you've put it into documentation and you've spent the time to put some processes together, you, there's a good chance that nobody's going to know what the heck to do,
Yeah.
or at least not at the level that you need it done to, to again satisfy those customers that are looking for certain products, certain varieties of plants, certain cultivars, and so forth. So the last thing I want to do is let down our customers in that regard, or in any regard. I'm a very customer service focused person.
Yeah.
We can talk more about customer service and how that lacks everywhere in the retail world these days, so, and what we're trying to do. But yeah, that's kind of where we go with it, is we want to document what we're doing, so that in theory, I could hand a 3-ring binder with a whole bunch of SOP sheets in it for how to do something. One of the examples we gave in our talk was run books. So in the IT world, you have run books that look at, okay, if this happens, you do this. If this happens, you do that. If that doesn't happen, we do this. In our world here, we turned that into SOPs for greenhouse startup and shutdown, because we're in Wisconsin. So we're not year round, we're seasonal. We shut down all the buildings, drain all the pipes, flip off the appropriate breakers, leave on certain breakers that need to be left on, for inflator fans, so we don't have snow and ice issues, and so forth. If that's not done correctly, we have a broken water pipe, right? And now somebody's got to go fix that, take the time to fix that. If you have to hire a plumber because you don't have plumbing background, now you got to go spend whatever that costs an hour plus materials. If you do it yourself, you still got to drive to the hardware store instead of spend some time with your family or work on other things that can benefit your business. So establishing those SOPs, those run books, has been very helpful for us. And we're still in the process of building those out, so that in theory, I should be able to hand this SOP for shutting down, a hoop house to someone with, some experience, but not a ton, maybe doing that, and say, okay, step 1, you look for these things. Step 2, you twist these handles. Step 3, you blow out the furnaces for any bird's nests, and so on and so forth.
And I mean, as you said, you almost take it for granted sometimes. You just kind of know what you're doing and all the processes that go along with it. But as you said, when you have somebody leave for whatever reason, I think I've heard that referred to as brain drain sometimes. But when that happens, how do you then effectively translate that knowledge to whoever the next person might be? So that's a really interesting, approach that you guys are taking there. That's really significant, I think.
It works for us. And I'm, again, I always worry about, I guess I shouldn't worry about too much about what my colleagues think. Who cares? We're all in this together. We all got different ideas. But I never want to get into a position where people are like, well, look at this young guy at 48, thinking he knows everything. I don't. But what we're trying to do is look at, excuse me, I got a little bronchitis right now. So perfect timing. What we're trying to do is look at, from other industries, not just the one I came from, how are those businesses being efficient? What are they doing to save time, save money, produce a better product or service, whatever that is. And if we can incorporate it, put that into the mix of what we do. So I spend a lot of time going to classes at Cultivate that maybe don't necessarily apply to my position, but I'm trying to suck up knowledge to understand what maybe my perennials manager is facing when it comes to, acquiring product, or even just what the new varieties are. What's the process that we use to look at, adopting new varieties for our customers? How do we go through those steps to make sure that we're picking out the right things that are going to do well for us? Because the perennial manager knows, and her staff knows, that you don't buy this thing that's, zone 9 and expect it to live up here. But you definitely want to have a process in place so that on the off chance those knowledgeable people aren't available to do the work or even make the decision, that they at least have some guideposts to
Yeah.
use.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up because I know, I was going to ask, beyond the presentation that you were involved in, obviously you got a chance to spend more time at Cultivate. What were some of the biggest takeaways that you took overall from Cultivate that you then are able to bring back to Kopke's and apply to how you do business?
Let me pull up my OneNote here. I'm one of those guys. I try to take copious notes, and then, as we all do, we grab the show books, and those are great. They offer those. I'm an iPad guy, but then we write down all these great ideas, and then we promptly never open the book again, right? I bet a lot of people can relate to that.
Oh yeah, yep. I'm looking at
So
myself on that too. So
yeah, I've got a Cultivate bag from every year going back 13 years, and each one has one of those books that for a time I never opened, but now I go through those and I open those and I read the notes that I took, and I
yep,
try to reach out to the presenters again. But some of the things that the sessions that I sat this year for me was a big focus on uh, of course, climate controls and new technology, because I'm kind of a tech nerd, so I'm always
right.
going to go to some of that. But I really wanted to focus more on customer service for our business this year. We are known in our area for having staff on the floor whose job is only to help customers.
Hmm.
They don't, the pendulum swings a little bit. For a while, that's all they did. Now they help put plants on the retail shelves. We have two main retail sales houses, and all the other 31 buildings are all for growing only. Customers
Hmm.
don't go in them. So we have a stocking team that hauls plants up. Then we have customer service folks. They're really consultative sales folks, but we
Yeah.
call them customer service with the intention of instilling not only in the staff, but in the customers, that they're there to guide people through who maybe are uncomfortable about what they're seeing, help people who are more knowledgeable, find the plants that they're looking for, and just provide customer service, which
Mm.
is so lacking in many industries. I read about an experience where somebody went to a large um, a large retailer that starts with a W, and that has plants during the season as well, but they, a very large, formerly family-owned company,
Right.
and they just asked somebody stocking the shelves, a younger person, hey, where can I find this product that they were looking for? And the response was more or less like almost an attitude of, I can't believe you're interrupting my job stocking shelves to ask me a question. Actually, interestingly enough, we were coming back from the IGC show down in Rosemont just the other night. We bought a booth there, and my retail manager, she attended the show and enjoyed the heck out of it, and found a lot of hard goods items that she wanted to bring up. We
Yeah.
went down with a couple of trucks to pack everything up, came back, and with one of my staff, we stopped at the Belvedere overpass on the way up, where they have some fast food and things like that. It's about 10 at night, and we go over to the Subway and we say, hey, can we get a sandwich? And the girl just looked at it and said, just so you know, I'm closing now. And I'm just like, okay, well, and I just said, I guess you lost 2 sales then. And the response was, like,
Yeah.
they just don't care. And that, God, I never, if we ever become a mega super whatever garden center, if we lose that personal touch where people really give a crap about the customer and understand that those customers are feeding all of our kids, I don't know what I'll do with myself, but I'm going to be flipping out mad, because that attitude, in today's world, just drives me up the wall. It's, I'm
Yeah.
giving you my money. You're working, and I know you get mad when you give your money to somebody else who doesn't treat you well. So let's can't we figure out how to just, be nice to each other and give each other good customer service? We're all in this together.
Well,
And
and
so,
when you're open, you're open. I mean, it's not like you have,
yeah,
I'm open and then I'm sort of open but partially closed until I'm fully closed. If you're open, you're open until that light goes out. Then yeah, I totally understand that.
yeah. And
Um,
so it drives me nuts, but that's what we're focused on, is really, it's almost more important than the product these days.
yeah,
uh, if you can provide that, not like chase customers around, kind of, like back in the old days of commission sales or anything, you're not doing that, but
Right.
having an empathetic staff that understands how to approach and work with customers and when to back off. We spend a significant amount of time training on that, another
Hmm.
process that we've documented.
Yeah.
um, that's worth almost as much as the product in the bank, because those customers remember that, and they are going to come back and they are going to say, hey, I had a great experience here. It wasn't just me hunting for a product. It was, wow, they really care about me being successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's worked for us, and we serve, out of our little place. Well, it's not that little anymore, but we're out in the backwoods of Wisconsin, and we're about, you know, 20, 15 miles south of our capital city, Madison here. People drive from Chicago to our place. They drive from the Twin Cities. They drive from Green Bay. They drive hundreds and hundreds of miles to come to our place to shop with us. And a lot of the feedback we get is, there was somebody there to help me. That's the
Mm.
number one thing. If you look at our Google reviews, it's like the number one thing that said, there's somebody there to help us.
Yeah.
So
Well,
anyway, sorry, I rambled.
no, that's great. I mean, and when you talk about customers, I know, this industry has seen a wave of new consumers coming in during and coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. What have you seen different in terms of, I guess number one, how customers are shopping today, and then two, just, when it comes to the products they're looking for, anything that you've noticed that has emerged more in the past couple of years that has wasn't really that important to the customer 5 or 6 years ago, but I'm thinking of like different category mixes there, that's something that's jumped out at you right now.
Sure. So post pandemic, and I think a lot of us, though some of us might have felt a little guilty, was very successful for our industry because people had not much else to do. So one of the
Yeah.
things they did was, look at our industry. And so we had our best years post pandemic or during the pandemic, and we've actually kept up with that with record years or right on the line since then.
Yeah.
Um, the customers are a little ruder. I'll say
Mm.
that. They seem to be a little more demanding, but again, it's one because that's what I think they're acting defensively because they're so used to not getting good customer service.
Yeah.
So they just go in and say, I want this, rather than saying, excuse me, do you have this? Um, what they're looking at. We've seen our hanging baskets hold pretty steady. We've seen our patio planters hold pretty steady. We're obviously increasing our numbers on each a little bit, just because we are seeing some growth. I think we had about, I'm trying to think what we had. I forgot. I don't want to give the wrong numbers out, but we've had
Right.
some growth every year. And we're seeing an uptick in food and veggie crops. Not huge leaps and bounds, but certainly there are more people coming in wanting to still grow their own food.
Hmm.
There's a certain segment of our population that is definitely looking at the U.S. food supply and looking at a lot of other industries that all factor into our health,
Yeah.
and saying either I want to eat healthier or I want to learn how to do this, or I don't like the taste of a hydroponically grown tomato. I want it out of the dirt. And I personally think they taste better. Sorry. No, not going to apologize for that. But I understand the need to create food as well for a hungry population. We're seeing folks that don't like what they see in the big box stores when they're shopping for food. And they're becoming more conscious of what goes into what they eat. So we're seeing an uptick in that.
Mm.
But just all across the board for us, because we never focused on perennials as much. We used to have a competitor in the area that was one of the premier perennial operations in our area. I mean, just an amazing place to go. They have since retired and for the most part closed down their business to the retail public. They still do some
Mm.
farmers markets. So we saw a big uptick in perennials for us, but again, that's more a regional situation for us
Right.
than it is, or a local situation than it is an industry-wide thing. Again, like you said, when you're in your industry, in your locality, you're kind of in a bubble to some degree, and so the only trends you see is really what's happening around you. I I don't know how influential the national media and the national advertising and some of the national trends are on, are on us where we are.
Right.
We're in the Midwest, so things take a year or two to get here from the coast. I still feel like that's true, even though we're in this age of mass media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, so forth. People are interested in those things online, but when the rubber hits the road, they're still doing the things, buying the things that they have always bought here, and then dipping their toes into some of the new varieties, dipping their toes into trying different things. I mean, we
Yeah.
grow 45 different varieties of tomatoes, which for some is like, oh my God, for others, it's like, yeah, we grow 45 too. But having that variety, we're seeing people asking for more and more things and different things. And so if we can fit it into a program, a tray of this or a couple of trays of that, yeah, we'll try it. Um, as long as you promise to come back and buy it.
Right. Yeah.
But inevitably, it's very rare we dump much of anything. We try to plan to only grow what we can sell in a great year over the last 5 years, and then we buy in the rest
Mhm.
from trusted partners. And that model for us has worked really, really well. So we're not dumping things unnecessarily, and we're not overbuying, outside the organization. We really want people to grow the stuff that we, or buy the stuff that we grow,
Right.
because that's supporting our families and our community,
Yeah.
rather than somebody, no offense, in Michigan or wherever else. That's great. They're going to have customers always. We want to feed our staff.
Right.
So that's kind of our focus. So we're seeing those types of things that stuck out. As far as cultivate, what stuck out there, it was, yeah, big focus on customer service. I went to this visioning um, talk that was really, really good, just talking a lot about price value shoppers versus people who will pay a lot for plants.
Mhm.
The session they had, and I forget all the people. After 13 years, I still don't know everybody's names and what their significance in the industry is. I'm sorry. There's a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think they had someone there from the Sill. They had someone else there from Costa Farms, and a gentleman that owns a large consulting company as well. And they were talking a lot about the online bit. We're not at that point yet where we're going to be selling plants online or shipping. That's
Mhm.
not our wheelhouse yet. I don't
Mhm.
know. We'll see. We tend to wait a few years while everybody else makes all the mistakes, and then we try to take all the lessons learned and then do it. There's no problem in being second place. Let the guy in front, make all the mistakes, and we'll figure it out after that.
Yeah.
And so, things like that. But just the value proposition of what we do, we keep trying to hammer on that, because we are a luxury product, right? Where you don't have to have geraniums to live. You have to have a roof over your head. You have to, in this day and age, you have to have a cell phone if you want to get anything done. You have to have some internet access. You don't have to have angelonia growing, outside on your deck. So just continuing to talk to people about how important this is to their well-being, and a lot of the touchy-feely, woo-woo stuff that we all inherently know. Just a lot of that kind of thing. There's just a ton of great sessions that stuck out for me. Sorry.
Great.
Hold on.
So, as we start to wind down, I want to look ahead a little bit and ask, I guess a twofold question. Number one, what, as you guys, wrap up 24 and start to plan for next year, anything new that you guys are looking at, whether it's in terms of a crop mix or something else in the business that you're looking to change? And then, just overall, what excites you about, where this industry lies in the future, both from, your own company and then the industry as a whole?
Okay. Um, Not a lot of major changes for us in our product mix or the things that we're growing. I think this year for us, it's going to depend on what the election does. I won't reveal my political leanings, but
Mhm.
depending on what happens there, we might see uh, things change. We don't know. We never know.
Right.
No matter what anybody, even economists, good ones, will say we're just guessing to some degree.
Yeah.
Uh, but the we're kind of in a, I think this year we're just in a tweak it kind of a season. So just kind of look at the things, worry about the 1-2% issues in the business,
Mm.
because we've tackled the major things. Now it's just tweaking. We're increasing a little bit on our 4-inch. We're, as far as annuals are concerned, we're increasing in our native offerings. That seems to be something that's shown some uptick in the last couple of years. We have a partnership with RES, Taylor Creek, as their one of their retail growers for Taylor Creek, or I
Yeah.
should retailers for Taylor Creek, because they're so darn busy with their wholesale portion of it. They don't have time to handle the retail stuff anymore. So we were thrilled to be able to work with them,
Yeah.
and so we're seeing a big uptick in the natives. That seems to be pretty important in our area. As far as veggies, we can't grow enough veggie starts.
Hmm.
We can't. We just can't. So, we're actually expanding facilities. We're in the process of doing that, which I got to go deal with a cement truck here real soon. Um, and to help accommodate that department and make that department a little more efficient so they can
Yeah.
use the space and time more wisely. What am I excited about? Well, I don't know. Again, I still feel like a kid in a candy store after 13 years. I got my head on a swivel, just looking at all the things that have happened, all the things that can happen, and trying to figure out, what are a couple of things that we can do to just help push us forward. And so, we historically have always been a spring seasonal business up until about 10 years ago,
Mm.
where we started doing a fall program. None of us wanted to do a fall program, but the writing was on the wall that if we wanted to keep our customers engaged, we can't just be putting out the weekly Facebook post, kind of a thing. That we've got to have something that can bring some of those customers back in to engage with us, and so we can engage with them and
Yeah.
learn, not only sell them something, but learn, how did the summer go for you, what worked, what didn't work.
Hmm.
So underhandedly, a little bit, surreptitiously, it's an info gathering thing. Every time a customer comes in for fall that already shops with us, we're asking those questions. We're not sending out a survey. We're talking to those people and saying, hey, how did those tomato plants work out for you?
Yeah.
It's getting increasingly difficult to remember everybody, because I think this year in the spring we served about 26,000 people. So it's hard to remember everybody, but I still see a lot of the same faces, and I just say, hey, I remember you getting that geranium combo. How did that work out for you? What were your conditions again? How did the watering go? I mean, gosh, it's been rainy as crap out here. How did
Yeah.
that work out for you? And just, we're always trying to learn more. We're not burnt out yet. So let me put it that way. I'm young enough. I'm not burnt out yet. Give me another 25 years and I'll be like, I'm done.
Nice. Nice.
I'm not ready to hang it up yet. Neither is the staff that we have. So that's what we're excited about, is we're really, the learning process, because as our staff starts to turn over, some with retirement, some because they're finding other opportunities. We have 100 seasonal staff that work with us. So some of them are younger, and they're hungry to learn. They want to know more. And so that's, as an industry, I see that in a lot of these folks that I talk to at Cultivate, at IGC, at local events. We have our Wisconsin Commercial Growers Association meetings. Talking to some of them, I mean, everybody's just hungry to learn more, and that's really excited, because coming from an outsider who grew up with boomer parents, who are just very like, this is the way it is and that's the only way it will be. And I don't use boomer as a derogatory thing, or I'm trying not to.
Right.
It's not me not trying to be condescending. It's just, there was a certain way you lived your life, and it was, this is the way we do things because I said so. Don't ask questions, drink from the hose, don't come back in until it's dark. That attitude I saw as an outsider to the industry across the board. And that's starting to change. We're seeing more empathy, more questions going up and questions coming down. Hey, what do you do all day? I know I hired you, but what do you do all day? And how is that working? What do you need to be more successful? What resources do you need? What knowledge do you need? And at least for us, we're taking that attitude forward, and really trying to not only learn for ourselves as owners, but educate our staff and anybody that, around here. I always tell everybody, if you want to go take a class at the local community college or the technical school, it's $300. Yeah, go. give me the receipt, as long as the class tracks to what we're doing. If it's
Yeah.
business, if it's, it's finance, if it's growing, if it's, plumbing, I could really use somebody that knows plumbing a little more, so I don't have to do it. I hate plumbing.
Yeah.
We're trying to educate our crew because, if going back to the football analogy, if all you ever do is run audibles with first year players, it's tough, man. It's tough. Plus that gives those people an incentive to come back because they feel like they're invested in. They feel like the attitude is, we want you to be successful here. We want you to grow with us. And that means something in a world where I have people that have applied and been hired by us that said, oh, I was on Indeed, I was on Monster, I applied to 30 different places and not a single company called me back. And then everybody complains that these kids don't want to work anymore. I think they do. I just don't know why they're not getting hired. They can't all be bad, can they? I mean, maybe, but so it's not one thing. It's a collection of attitude, some visionary stuff that really my stepfather started. It's just looking at the future and saying, hey, how are we going to be around in 20 years if we don't invest in our people? How are we going to be around in 20 years? How am I going to pass this business on to my kids? If we don't set them up for some level of success, they're going to have to earn it. Working in this industry is hard. But if we can give them tools to get it done right and recognize them for that, and appreciate them for that, and give them a future, I feel like Kopkes will be around for another 40 years. And maybe my head grower, Rick, and I will be just sitting in our fishing boats, phoning it in, at some point in 20 years. So 30 years, one could hope.
Thanks for joining us. You can learn more at greenhousegrower.com. Please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, and please leave us a rating as it helps other podcast listeners find the show.